I remember the way the church doors groaned when they opened. Slow, heavy, like even they didn't want to witness what was about to happen. The scent of old wood and dying roses mixed, with cigar smoke drifting from the pews, and every head turned toward me, not with admiration but with pity. I kept walking, because stopping wasn't an option, not when 2 Mafia soldiers flanked me like shadows, reminding me with every step that this wasn't a ceremony, it was an order. My hands trembled around the bouquet. I'd chosen the flowers myself. White lilies, the symbol of innocence. How ironic. Innocence was the very thing being dragged to the altar like a lamb, too quiet to scream. And there he was, Dominic Moretti, the man I was being forced to wed. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He didn't even pretend to be civilized. He stood there in a tailored black suit, tattoos brushing the edges of his collar, jaw clenched like he'd rather shoot himself than marry me. His dark eyes swept over me once, cold, unreadable, annoyed that this moment required his presence. If anyone else looked at me like that, I'd run. But Dominic wasn't anyone. He was the kind of man people whispered about at night. The ruthless Mafia heir, the stone-hearted enforcer, the man who built walls so thick even bullets couldn't get through. And now he was supposed to be my husband. The priest cleared his throat, his voice unsteady as though he knew the devil himself stood before him. We gather here today. Skip it, Dominic muttered. 2 words. Sharp, cold, commanding. The priest startled, then jumped straight to the vows. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might echo through the entire church. Do you, Dominic Moretti, take? Yes. He didn't wait for the full sentence. Didn't look at me. Didn't pretend to care. Just cut the priest off. Impatient, as if agreeing to marry me cost him nothing more than a sigh. Then all eyes shifted to me. I swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed to say no, to run, to hide, to protect whatever tiny piece of freedom I had left. But my father's life was on the line. My family's safety dangled by a thread Dominic held between 2 fingers. He never threatened. Outright. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to deliver the message. So I said the word that sealed my fate. Yes. My voice cracked, and I hated that he heard it. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. A brief pause. Momentary shift. Like the sound of my fear hit him somewhere he didn't expect. But the moment vanished as quickly as it came. The priest continued, performing a wedding that wasn't a wedding at all. Just a business. Transaction sealed with vows that meant nothing to one of us. By the power vested in me, I... Get it over with, Dominic snapped. Then came the moment I dreaded. The kiss. I didn't lift my face. I didn't want it. I didn't want him. But Dominic leaned in anyway. Not soft, not tender, just claiming what he was told was his. His lips brushed mine in the faintest, coldest contact, and still it felt like my world shifted beneath my feet. Not because it was romantic. No, because that kiss was a warning, a silent declaration. You're mine now. Live accordingly. The pews rustled as people stood, pretending to applaud. No cheers, no joy, only fear disguised as celebration. Dominic stepped back, adjusting his cufflink like he couldn't wait to get away from me. Let's go, he muttered, already walking down the aisle. And just like that, the ceremony ended. He didn't offer his arm. He didn't look back. He didn't acknowledge that he'd just become my husband. I followed him, my dress dragging behind me, feeling less like a bride and more like a prisoner, being escorted to a new cell. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright, too warm for a world that had just turned so cold. The limo door opened, and Dominic slid inside without a word. I hesitated for a second, staring at the life I'd just been forced into. When I finally climbed in beside him, he didn't even glance my way. Only said one thing. Understand this. You may be my wife now, but don't expect me to treat you like one. Then the door shut, and my new life, dark, dangerous, and bound to a man who despised me, began. The limo was too quiet, too dark, too cold, like the air obeyed him, shrinking back just as I did. Dominic sat beside me, but it felt like he was miles away. Arms crossed, gaze fixed out the tinted window, jaw tight enough to crack. The city lights flickered across his face, carving shadows along his cheekbones. He looked like a man carved out of stone. And I was the chisel forced into his hand. No words, not a single one. He acted like marrying me had drained the last drop of patience he had left. I shifted slightly, and even that tiny movement made him exhale sharply, like my presence itself was an inconvenience. "Sit still," he murmured, voice low, irritated. I froze. Not because he scared me, though he did, but because I didn't know what would set him off next. Minutes passed like hours before the limo stopped. The door opened, and Dominic stepped out first, never looking back to see if I followed. Climbed out, clutching the dress that suddenly felt too heavy. His mansion rose before us. 3 stories of black stone, guarded gates, men with guns, and windows that glowed like watchful eyes. Home, apparently. Dominic didn't slow, didn't wait, didn't acknowledge that I was struggling to keep up in heels. Inside, the foyer stretched out in marble and silence. The kind of place that whispered power. The kind of place that reminded you who owned it, and who didn't. He finally stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "This is the part," he said, "where people expect a romantic speech. A welcome. Maybe a kiss. That means something." My stomach tightened. I didn't dare respond. Dominic looked at me fully for the first time since the church. His eyes, dark, sharp, unreadable, scanned my face slowly like he was studying a problem he didn't ask for. "Let me be clear," he said. "Tonight changes nothing." His voice was flat, controlled, the voice of a man who didn't bend for anyone. "You sleep in the guest room," he went on. "3rd door on the left. Don't wander, don't touch. Anything that isn't yours, and don't—" He leaned in slightly, eyes narrowing. "Don't make the mistake of thinking this marriage makes you important." The words hit harder than I expected, not because I wanted importance, but because I felt so disposable. I nodded quietly. Not out of obedience, out of survival. He turned, heading toward his study. But halfway there, he paused. For 1 second, 1 breath, it was like the mansion itself stopped moving. Dominic looked back at me. "Earlier," he said, "at the church, you froze before the kiss." Heat shot to my cheeks. "Because I didn't—" He cut me off with a look. A sharp, unreadable look that made the air thicken. He stepped closer slowly, each footstep echoing across the marble. I should have stepped back. I didn't. He reached out, not to touch me, not even close, but close enough that I felt the warmth of his hand hovering near my jaw. "That kiss," he said quietly, "was a formality, nothing more." Then his eyes, those cold, dangerous eyes, lowered to my lips. "But you should know something." My pulse hammered. My breath caught. My body betrayed me. "What?" I whispered. Dominic leaned in, voice brushing my ear. "If I ever choose to kiss you again, it won't be because I have to." A shiver ran through me, sharp and humiliating. He stepped back instantly, the softness gone, the walls back up. "Guest room," he repeated, turning away. "That's where you stay." He disappeared down the hall, leaving me alone in that enormous, echoing mansion. His words, still burning through my skin. I walked upstairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. My room was beautiful, polished, perfect, and it felt like a gilded cage. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my wedding dress, listening to the muffled sound of Dominic's footsteps downstairs. Distance, separation, walls. But there was something else too. Something he tried to hide. Because when he leaned close, when he whispered that warning, I heard something in his voice I wasn't supposed to hear. Restraint. And restraint is only needed when there is something to hold back. I woke to voices. Not loud, but sharp. Sharp enough to slice through the walls of the guest room like knives scraping porcelain. I sat up, still wearing yesterday's fear like a second skin. My wedding dress lay folded neatly on. The chair, though I didn't remember folding it. Maybe I had. Maybe I was too numb to know. The voices downstairs grew clearer. First, a woman. Cold, elegant, poison wrapped in silk. "Dominic, you cannot be serious. Her? That girl is who you married?" Then a man, older, deeper, smug enough to fill a room. "An orphan with no pedigree, no power, no strategic value. What were you thinking?" Their words twisted my stomach. I knew I wasn't supposed to listen, but walking downstairs into the den felt like walking toward a storm, one I was apparently the center of. I reached the bottom step just in time to see Dominic standing before them, his parents, unmistakably so. His mother, a sculpted ice queen. His father, a thick-shouldered man with eyes that assessed everything as asset or threat. Both stared at me like I was the latter. His mother's lip curled. "You look even more plain in daylight." I froze, not because the insult hurt, but because she said it while smiling. Dominic didn't look at me. His jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. His father stepped closer, circling me once like examining a purchase. She's too soft, too naive, too breakable. I swallowed hard, fingers twisting in the hem of my robe. Then he looked at Dominic. "You married weakness." Dominic's eyes flickered, just a flash, but enough for me to notice. Annoyance, maybe anger. It was the first sign of emotion I'd seen aimed at anyone other than me. His mother scoffed. "She's barely more than a child, and you expect her to survive in this. Family? She'll fold the first time someone raises their voice." Her gaze cut into me. "Won't you, dear?" Dominic finally spoke. His voice was low, dark, controlled. "That's enough." His father laughed. "You're defending her now?" Dominic didn't answer. Instead, he stepped slightly in front of me. Not obviously, not deliberately, but enough that I noticed it. Enough that they noticed, too. His mother shook her head. "You should get that annulled. Fix your mistake now before it costs us." I felt the breath leave my body. Annulled. As if I were paperwork. As if my entire world, forced marriage and all, could be erased like smudged ink. I forced myself to speak. My being here wasn't my choice. The room went silent. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Dominic's mother raised a brow. "Oh, and now she talks." His father chuckled. "Maybe she has a little fire. Shame it won't matter." Dominic exhaled sharply. He pinched the bridge of his nose, then glared at his father. "We're done here." But his mother wasn't done. She stepped up to me, her perfume sugary sweet in the most suffocating way. "You will embarrass him," she whispered. "You will weaken him." Then smiling, "And we will watch the fallout." I didn't know what came over me. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe humiliation. Maybe the tiny thread of courage I'd buried for years. I lifted my chin. "I may be soft," I said quietly, "but I'm not fragile." Silence. Heavy. Stunned. Dominic's father blinked in disbelief. His mother's smile turned predatory. And Dominic, he looked at me for the first time that morning. Really looked, like he hadn't expected me to speak, much less stand my ground. His father scoffed. "Cute. She thinks she belongs here." Dominic stepped forward, his voice like steel. "She does." The room froze. His parents exchanged a shocked glance. Dominic continued, every word precise, deadly calm. "She's my wife, and she stays." My breath caught. Not because it felt protective. He didn't look at me, didn't soften, didn't change. But because it was the first time he'd publicly claimed me at all. His mother's voice dripped contempt. "So this is how it will be?" Dominic stepped closer to me, his shoulder brushing mine. Just enough pressure to tell me to stand still. "To be clear," he said, "if anyone in this house disrespects my wife again, I'll take it personally." A threat, quiet but unmistakable. His parents fell silent, gauging their son, realizing he meant it. Dominic turned to me. His eyes flashed. Dark, unreadable, something simmering beneath the cold. "Come," he said softly, but not gentle. More like a command no one else was allowed to hear. I followed him out, my pulse a wildfire. But one thing was suddenly, painfully clear. Dominic didn't want me. His family despised me. And yet, in the middle of all that hostility, I wasn't as alone as I thought. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing Dominic and me away from the venom dripping off his parents' words. The hallway felt too long, too quiet, and I matched his steps carefully. Not too close, not too far, like walking beside a sleeping lion. Dominic didn't speak. Not at first. His shoulders were rigid, every muscle wound tight beneath his shirt. He looked like a man, trying to hold something in. Anger, frustration, control. I couldn't tell. He led me into a room I hadn't seen before. A study, walls lined with dark wood and darker secrets. A desk scarred by years of use. A single lamp casting gold light on his face, sharpening everything about him. He finally turned toward me. "Close the door." I obeyed, not because he scared me, though he did, but because something in his voice promised consequences if I didn't. I stepped forward, heartbeat trembling through my ribs. Dominic watched me with an expression I couldn't read. Not cold, not angry. Something else. Something he didn't want me to notice. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the chair opposite his desk. I sat. He remained standing, arms crossed, gaze fixed on me like a general preparing a soldier for war. "Since my parents felt the need to open their mouths," he said, "we're going to set some rules." Now, rules. Of course there would be rules. If control were oxygen, Dominic Moretti breathed it. He moved around the desk, leaning forward on his palms, eyes locked with mine. "Rule 1, he said quietly. "You don't leave this house without me, or without my permission." I opened my mouth to protest, but his expression tightened. Not harsh, not cruel, just final. "It's not about control," he added. "It's about safety. My name puts a target on your back." I swallowed, nodding slightly. "Rule 2, he continued. "You don't ask questions about my business." That one stung. Not because I wanted to know, but because he expected me to sit in silence, blindfolded through a world built on violence. "And Rule 3, he said, voice dropping lower. "Don't get involved in anything that isn't meant. For you. Not arguments, not deals, not problems. You stay in your lane." My lane, a tidy little box drawn neatly around me. He stepped closer, stopping in front of my chair. So close the faint smell of cedar and smoke filled the air around me. "You understand?" I looked up at him. Not defiant, not submissive, just honest. "You think I want to interfere?" I whispered. "I never wanted to be here in the first place." The silence that followed was thick. Dominic's jaw flexed. His eyes searched my face like he was seeing something new, something inconvenient. Then he stepped back suddenly, the moment cutting like snapped tension. "Good," he muttered. "Then we'll get along fine as long as you do what I say." He moved toward the liquor cabinet, pouring himself a drink. The amber liquid caught the light, glinting like a warning. He didn't offer me one. I wasn't sure if that was a slight or a courtesy. I shifted in the chair. "And what about you?" He paused mid-sip. "What about me? Were there rules you'll follow too?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His head turned slowly, a slow, dangerous kind of stillness. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, soft, disbelieving, like he couldn't decide whether I was brave or stupid. "What rules do you think I need?" he asked. 1,000 answers rushed through me. Don't bark commands, don't break people with silence, don't kiss someone if you don't mean it. But I said none of them. Instead, I whispered the truth. Maybe the same ones you expect from me. Dominic stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked toward me again. Slow, deliberate steps that made the air tremble. He braced one hand on the arm of my chair, leaning down until his breath ghosted my cheek. "Let me make something very clear," he murmured. "There are 2 people in this marriage." His other hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from my face in a gesture far too gentle to match his tone. "But only one of us sets the rules." My pulse fluttered. My breath hitched. And he knew it. I could see it in the slight shift of his eyes. He straightened slowly. "Your room is upstairs. Dinner is at 8. Don't be late." He walked toward the door, but paused with his hand on the knob. His voice low, rough, almost human. "And one more thing," he added without looking at me. "I don't hurt people who follow the rules. Don't make me an exception." Then he left, the door clicking shut behind him. And for the first time since the wedding, I realized something terrifying. Dominic Moretti wasn't just dangerous. He was unpredictable. By the time the clock struck 8, my nerves were wound so tightly I could hear my heartbeat, echoing inside my ribs. I wasn't sure what dinner with Dominic Moretti looked like: interrogation, silent tension, or some twisted mix of both. The dining room was enormous. Marble floors, a long dark wooden table, a chandelier dripping gold light above it. But only 2 seats were set. His and mine. Dominic was already seated when I stepped inside. He didn't rise, didn't greet me, just lifted a single assessing glance, slow, deliberate, enough to make my breath stumble. Then returned, his gaze to the file he was reading. He wore black again. He always wore black. It matched him. Sharp, controlled, a warning masquerading as a wardrobe. I approached the table cautiously. "Sit," he said without looking up. I did. For a moment, the only sound was the clink of silverware as servants placed plates before us. Perfectly cooked steak, roasted vegetables, wine poured into crystal glasses. A feast fit for royalty. Except I didn't feel like a queen. I felt like a replacement, a placeholder, a guest in a life I didn't want. Dominic finally set the file down. "You're quiet," he said. "I thought that was one of your rules," I replied softly. "Stay in my lane, stay silent." One corner of his mouth lifted, not a smile, more like amusement he didn't approve of. "I didn't say silent," he murmured. "Just smart." My pulse stuttered. "And what does smart mean in your world?" His eyes lifted to mine, dark and direct. "It means knowing when to speak and when not to." I pushed my food around the plate, appetite tangled with anxiety. He watched me for a moment, expression unreadable. "You're not eating." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." The command was gentle, but the authority underneath it wasn't. I took a small bite out of instinct, not obedience. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "What happened with my parents today?" he began. I clenched my fork. "They hate me. They hate everyone." That's not comforting. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like a puzzle he didn't remember buying. "You handled yourself better than I expected." It wasn't a compliment, but it wasn't an insult either. "I didn't do anything," I murmured. "You stood up to them." I blinked. He'd noticed that? His gaze stayed on me, sharper now, more focused. I've seen people break under far less. A strange warmth slipped through me. Pride, maybe. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Your father will be safe," Dominic said suddenly. My breath caught. What? "I know that's why you agreed to this marriage. I'm not blind." His voice lowered. "And I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a liar." I stared at him, stunned. He hadn't said the words gently. He hadn't said them kindly. But saying them at all mattered. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me." His voice was rough. "This arrangement benefits me too." "How?" I asked before I could stop myself. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled on the table. "That's not something you need to know." The conversation died there. Not from coldness, but from boundaries I wasn't meant to cross. Silence thickened again. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was heavy with something else, something shifting beneath the surface. Dominic drank his wine slowly, watching me over the rim of the glass. Not evaluating, not annoyed, just watching. I felt my skin heat under that gaze, my pulse betraying me. And he noticed, because Dominic always noticed. When dinner ended, I stood to leave, hoping to escape whatever tension had wrapped itself around us. "Wait," he said. I stopped. Dominic rose from his chair, every movement deliberate, powerful, dangerous in its calm, and walked around the table until he stood directly in front of me. I didn't look up. Couldn't. Not when he was this close. He tilted my chin with a single finger. Light, barely there, but enough to command my full attention. "You follow the rules," he murmured, voice low, almost warm. "And I'll protect you." My breath hitched. Not from fear, from something far more confusing. His eyes dropped briefly to my lips. Just a flicker, before he stepped back. "Good night," he said, turning away. 2 steps, 3. Then he paused. Without looking back, Dominic added, "And don't come downstairs after midnight. I don't want you seeing things you shouldn't." The warning wasn't cold. Or threatening. It sounded like concern. Something I never expected from him. And as I climbed the stairs to my room, one thought echoed louder than all the others. Dominic Moretti wasn't just a man with rules. He was a man with secrets. Isabella stood in the bedroom's doorway, staring at the wide, king-sized bed that looked like it. Had been carved for a man who never learned how to share anything, least of all space. The velvet curtains fluttered slightly in the breeze, brushing against her bare arms, reminding her that she wasn't here by choice. She was here because fate shoved her into a world she didn't understand, and a marriage she wasn't ready for. And somewhere behind her she could feel him before she heard him. Damian Moretti, her enemy, her protector, her husband. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, the kind that announced control more than presence. He stopped a few feet behind her, and she felt the heat of his body before he said a word. "You're tense," His voice was a low ripple, brushing the back of her neck like a touch he hadn't earned yet. She inhaled sharply. I'm in a stranger's house, sharing a room with a stranger, and you're shocked I'm tense? He stepped closer, too close. Wife, not stranger. She turned, finally facing him. The dim lamplight caught the sharp lines of his face. Those cold, gray eyes, the scar on his jaw, the mouth that never softened for anyone. But something about her made him hesitate, like he didn't know how to navigate softness. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Damien exhaled, slow and almost frustrated. You don't have to be afraid of me. Isabella laughed under her breath. It wasn't cruel, just tired. You say that like fear is optional around a Mafia boss. His eyes flickered. Irritation, guilt, something darker. He walked past her, setting his jacket on the chair, unbuttoning the cuffs of his shirt. And God help her. He looked dangerous even doing something so simple. His muscles shifted with every movement, tattoos stretching across his forearms like silent warnings. He caught her staring, and the air changed. His voice dropped. I won't touch you unless you want me to. Her heart jolted. Damien, I'm not, this isn't... But whatever she was trying to say never finished. A deafening crack split the air. Glass shattered. The lamp beside the bed exploded into sparks. Sniper shot. Damien moved before the echo died. One arm around Isabella's waist, pulling her flush against him, shielding her with his body as he drove them both to the floor. Her breath left her in a gasp. His weight pinned her down, strong and unyielding, the heat of him burning through layers of silk and fear. Stay down, he growled, voice roughened with urgency. She could feel his heartbeat hammering against her back. Hard, fast, not cold this time. Human! Another shot hit the wall. Damien cursed under his breath, dragging her behind the heavy oak dresser. Her palms shook, her breaths came short and broken, but his arms stayed wrapped around her, forming a cage that felt terrifying and safe. He tilted her chin up, forcing her eyes to meet his. You're not dying on the first night of our marriage. I won't allow it. She swallowed. And you? What if you get hit? His expression hardened. I'm not allowed to die until I know who ordered this. Isabella whispered, barely audible. Your family? His jaw tensed. Maybe, or yours. Her chest tightened. For a moment, everything fell silent. Then Damien reached up, gently cupping her cheek, so softly it didn't feel like it came from the same man who snapped bones without blinking. I promise you this, Isabella. His thumb brushed her skin, slow and deliberate. As long as you're mine, no bullet touches you before it reaches me. Her breath stilled, and in the darkness surrounded by danger, it hit her. He wasn't lying. He would burn the world before he let her bleed. The mansion didn't sleep after the attack. It watched. It listened. It waited. And so did Isabella. Hours after the sniper's bullets shattered the night, she sat on the edge of the bed, legs tucked, close. Blanket wrapped around her like armor. The room smelled of gunpowder and fear, and something else. Something she didn't want to name yet. Across the room, Damien paced like a caged predator, calm on the surface, storm underneath. His shirt was half unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, tattoos flexing as tension rippled through him. He spoke into his phone, voice controlled but lethal. Find him. I want a name before sunrise. Whoever was on the other end understood the weight of that command. Bodies would fall before breakfast. When he hung up, the silence grew thick. Damien turned toward her, and for the first time, tonight, he looked conflicted, almost guilty. He approached slowly, his movements careful, like she was something delicate he wasn't built to handle. Are you hurt? His tone was low, rough around the edges. She shook her head. No, you pulled me down before. He exhaled sharply and sat beside her, elbows on his knees. That shot was meant for your head. If I was a second slower... His jaw clenched. She stared at him, really stared. This man who ruled criminals. This man who strangled problems with his bare hands. This man who wasn't supposed to care. You saved my life, Damien. He didn't look at her. Because you're my responsibility. She tilted her head. Is that the only reason? Silence. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. He finally spoke, softer this time. I told myself I'd never get attached to you. That this marriage was a transaction, nothing more. Her breath hitched, not because she was hurt, but because it felt like he was about to admit something bigger. But when that bullet came toward you, his voice dropped. I felt something I don't feel, not for anyone. He leaned back, gaze fixed on the bullet hole in the wall. Fear. The word didn't belong to him. It sounded strange leaving his mouth, like it resisted being spoken. Isabella's stomach tightened. Fear of losing me? He shook his head. No, fear of what I would become if someone took you from me. The confession settled between them like heat. Her pulse kicked. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare sign of vulnerability. I don't know how to be around innocence. I destroy things, break them, bend them. But you... He swallowed. You make me hesitate. She forced her voice to stay steady. And is hesitation bad? Damien finally met her eyes. No, it's dangerous. He reached toward her but paused halfway, as if waiting for her to flinch. She didn't. His fingers touched her hand. One soft, tentative touch that somehow felt more intimate than being thrown to the floor under gunfire. You're changing me, he murmured, almost to himself. Isabella's heart raced. Maybe she should have pulled away, but she didn't. You don't have to be rude with me, Damien, she whispered. Not all the time. He huffed out a breath, a sound too close to a laugh. Trust me, I don't want to be. His thumb brushed her knuckles. Then, without warning, his voice turned darker. I need you to stay close to me until we know who tried to kill you. She frowned. Close how? His eyes flicked to the bed, then back to her. Close enough that I can reach you before a bullet does. She swallowed. That sounds like an excuse. He leaned in, lips inches from hers. It is. A knock slammed against the door. Both stiffened. Damien growled low. This better be good. The door opened a crack. Boss, we found something. Isabella felt Damien's hand tighten around hers. Something was coming. And whatever it was, it would change everything. The mansion was quiet again, but it felt heavier tonight. The kind of heavy that presses down on your chest, on your thoughts, on the thin line between safety and disaster. Isabella had just settled back into her room after dinner with Damien, the tension from earlier still thrumming in her veins like a live wire. She was pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders when she noticed something unusual, a folder tucked behind a stack of papers on the writing desk. She didn't recognize it, and she wasn't supposed to. Curiosity and instinct warred inside her. But in Damien's world, curiosity was dangerous. The temptation was too strong. She slid the folder out quietly, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside were photographs, documents, bank statements, names, dates, and at the center of it, all her family. Her pulse spiked. They weren't just collateral in Damien's world. They weren't even just threatened. They were involved. Her father, her mother, her younger brother, all of them, connected to a rival family she'd never even heard of. Old grudges, secret debts, betrayals that went back decades. And the realization hit her like a bullet. This marriage, this forced union, it wasn't random. It had been orchestrated. Her family had made deals she didn't understand. Deals that had put her directly in Damien's path. Isabella's hands shook as she traced a photo of her father shaking hands with a man she didn't recognize but who looked frighteningly familiar. Like he belonged to the shadows she'd glimpsed in Damien's world. A knock at the door startled her, making her drop the folder. Papers scattered across the floor. Isabella? Damien's voice called, low and wary. She scrambled to pick up the folder, hiding it behind her back. I was just cleaning up, she stammered. He stepped into the room, eyes immediately scanning the desk. His sharp gaze caught the corner of the folder peeking out. Give it to me, he said, his voice deceptively calm. She hesitated. Then, knowing there was no winning this, slowly handed it over. Damien's hands were steady as he flipped through the papers. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Your family, he muttered under his breath. What about them? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. He only looked at her with something she hadn't seen before. Something Fierce, protective, almost dangerous in its intensity. "They made you a target," he finally said, voice low enough that it almost seemed to vibrate in the room. "They've been hiding debts, enemies, promises they couldn't keep." Her stomach sank. The betrayal cut sharper than she expected. Not from Damien, not even from her parents, but from the world she'd trusted. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I wasn't sure how much you could handle," he replied evenly, though his eyes betrayed the storm underneath. "And this isn't just about you. It's bigger, far bigger. If anyone knew you were poking around, they'd come for you first." Isabella swallowed hard. The reality of her situation crashed over her. Every step, every decision, every forced smile at her family now felt tainted. Every trust she had was questioned. But amid the fear, there was a spark. She realized she had the upper hand in one way: knowledge, dangerous knowledge. And for the first time since being dragged into Damien's world, she felt empowered. Damien set the folder down, leaning close to her. "You're not weak," he murmured, his voice rough, almost intimate. "But you need to understand something. In this world, innocence can get you killed." "I can handle myself," she whispered, though her heart raced. He studied her, eyes dark, unreadable. "Maybe, but I'll be watching. And if anyone threatens, you, your family, theirs, or anyone else, I won't just protect you. I'll make them regret it." Her breath caught. Fear and something else, anticipation perhaps, coursed through her. She realized that Damien's walls weren't unbreakable. His obsession, his need to protect, was growing, and her presence was becoming the spark that ignited it. That night, Isabella lay awake, the folder clutched tightly in her hands, haunted by the revelation, and yet strangely comforted. She had discovered the dangerous secret, and in doing so, she had become something more than just a pawn. She had become someone he couldn't ignore. And Damien, he would soon realize that she wasn't just his wife on paper. She was the one who would test him, challenge him, and ultimately change him. The night air was heavy with rain. A storm had rolled over the city, washing the streets in slick reflections of amber streetlights. Isabella stood at the balcony, coat wrapped tightly around her, hair plastered to her cheeks, heart still racing from the revelations earlier that day. She hadn't expected him to come out here. Not after the folder incident, not after the tense dinner. But Damien Moretti stepped out from the shadows of the doorway, coat draped over his shoulders, eyes darker than the storm clouds above. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, the rain drenching him, muscles tense, every movement deliberate. Isabella's breath caught. She could feel the electricity between them, the tension that had been building since the wedding, since the first night, since the moment he had stepped in front of her to protect her from the sniper. "Why are you out here?" she asked softly, almost afraid he would vanish like a phantom if she spoke. "I could ask you the same," he replied, voice low, rumbling like distant thunder. She met his gaze. There was no mockery in it, no rudeness, only a raw intensity she hadn't seen before. "Because I need to think," she admitted. "And I can't think anywhere else. Not in that house. Not in front of everyone." He studied her silently for a long moment, then finally stepped closer. Each step was deliberate. Slow, measured, like he was calculating distance, like the air itself was obeying him. "Do you know," he murmured, voice just above the hiss of rain, "what you've done to me today?" She shook her head. "Your family, the secrets, the way you look at me, the way you challenge me, the way you survive," he said, his words punctuated by the storm around them. "You've made me something I haven't felt in years." Her pulse raced. She took a cautious step back, but he mirrored it, closing the distance so their breaths mingled. The rain plastered strands of hair across their faces, and she could feel the heat radiating off him despite the chill. "Damien," she whispered, almost afraid to name him. He brushed a wet strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered. His eyes burned into hers, searching, demanding, wanting. I can't, I shouldn't," she stammered, the words dying in her throat. His hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up so she had no choice but to look at him. "Then let me," he said simply. And for the first time, really the first time, his lips found hers. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't forced. It wasn't a kiss of obligation, like the wedding day. It was deliberate, hungry, searching. Her body betrayed her, leaning into him, craving something she hadn't allowed herself to admit existed. The warmth of him, the roughness beneath the softness, the way he held her. Not as a stranger, not as a prisoner, not as a boss, but as someone who wanted her entirely. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer as the storm raged around them. Rain soaked their clothes, ran down their faces, but neither cared. When he finally pulled back, just enough to look at her, his forehead rested against hers, breaths mingling. "You're mine," he whispered, voice rough and intimate. "And I don't just mean on paper." Her chest heaved. "Yes," she breathed, almost afraid to speak the word aloud. "Yes, I'm yours." The city lights flickered below them, the storm raging, the world outside oblivious to what was happening on this balcony. For that moment, time didn't exist, only the heat between them, only the truth of what had just passed, the first kiss that mattered. Damien pressed his lips to her temple, soft and possessive. "I should have done this sooner," he murmured. "But I wanted it to be right." Isabella smiled against him, rain-soaked and breathless, realizing that in all the chaos, in all the danger, she had broken something inside him too. His walls, the ones he built to protect himself from everyone, were cracking, and she knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The mansion was eerily silent the morning after the storm, the air still heavy with rain and tension. Isabella stood at the grand window, watching the city glisten in puddles and reflections, still, damp with the memory of last night. She wasn't sure if she should feel proud, scared, or something else entirely. Her first real kiss with Damien lingered in her veins like wildfire. Then came the first calls. Her father's voice on the phone was strained, brittle. "Isabella, are you safe?" she cut in sharply, because she already knew the answer. She had survived, but it wasn't luck. Not really, it was Damien. "Yes, but we need to talk," he stammered. Your husband, he's more than we imagined." She knew the weight of his words before he even finished. Her family had underestimated Damien, underestimated the power he held, underestimated the fact that she was no longer just a pawn in their schemes. Her father didn't say it outright, but regret dripped from every syllable. The way he faltered, the way he avoided speaking directly, like admitting the truth would make him crumble, was obvious. "Your father. He's scared," Isabella whispered to herself, folding the phone against her chest. And then the text came, her mother, her brother. Everyone she loved, scrambling, trying to apologize, to explain, to make excuses for the deals they had hidden, for the debts they had incurred, for the secrets that had thrown her life into chaos. But Isabella wasn't angry. Not exactly. She felt powerful. She realized she had survived. She had faced the darkness, and now, in the eyes of her family, she was untouchable. Damien's presence was the difference. Without him, her family's regret would mean nothing. But with him, they suddenly understood the consequences of underestimating her or underestimating him. She felt his hand on her shoulder, strong, warm, dominant, yet protective. "You're reading their texts," he said, voice low, almost amused. She turned to him, smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I am. They're realizing their mistakes." He didn't smile, not exactly. He only brushed a wet strand of hair from her face, eyes dark and commanding. "Good. Let them regret it. Let them understand that you're not just a pawn in anyone's game. Anymore. Not theirs, not mine, not anyone's." Isabella leaned against him, heart still racing from the events of the last 24 hours. "You make it easy to survive," she whispered. He laughed softly, a sound low and dangerous. "Don't confuse survival with weakness. You survived because I chose to protect you, not because you're fragile. You're stronger than you realize. But my rules still apply." Her pulse quickened. She realized that in this world, strength alone didn't guarantee safety. But having Damien's unwavering presence by her side did. Later that day, Isabella watched as her family arrived at the mansion, nervous, apologetic, and undeniably terrified. They spoke cautiously, measured their words, eyes flicking constantly. Toward Damien, she saw the fear in their faces, the shame, the unspoken acknowledgement that they had been wrong to think they could manipulate her, that they had been reckless to think she could be controlled. And Damien didn't let them forget it. "You," he said to her father, sharp and cold. "You thought my wife was a liability. You thought you could endanger her. You were wrong." Her father swallowed hard. Her mother bit her lip. Her brother's hands shook. Damien's eyes swept over them all. "You will respect her, or you will leave." The room went silent. Isabella felt a rush of satisfaction. Not cruel, but inevitable. Her family's regret was complete, and in that regret, they finally understood who she had become and who Damien was. Her husband stepped closer, brushing her hair from her face. "You're mine," he murmured again, low and intimate. "And everyone else will learn it, one way or another." Isabella exhaled slowly, leaning into him. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And together, she and Damien were unstoppable. The evening settled over the mansion like a velvet curtain, heavy and intimate. Rain had stopped, leaving the air outside cool, crisp, and charged with electricity. Isabella sat in the library, a book she wasn't reading open on her lap while the fire crackled beside her. Every shadow seemed alive, and every sound echoed too loudly. Her pulse, her thoughts, the soft whisper of Damien moving through the hallway. He entered without knocking, as always, footsteps deliberate and quiet, yet somehow announcing his presence. He leaned against the door frame, one arm crossed over his chest, eyes fixed on her like he'd been watching her for hours. "You're not reading," he said, voice low, calm, but somehow dangerous. "I was," she murmured, glancing down at the book. "I just lost my place." Damien didn't move from the doorway. He didn't need to. His presence filled the room like a shadow with substance. "You can't hide from me, Isabella," he said softly, stepping closer. "Not in this house. Not anywhere." Her chest tightened. She tried to force a casual smile. "I'm not hiding." He came closer still, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body, the scent of cedar, and danger filling her senses. The air between them seemed charged, static, humming. "You're nervous," he observed, voice dipping lower, rougher. "Do you know why?" She faltered, heart stuttering. "Maybe because you're always watching." A flicker of amusement danced across his eyes, brief and unreadable. "I'm always aware, always protective, always—" He trailed off, and for a second, his gaze softened, interested. Her pulse jumped. She tried to remain composed, but the way he said the word, the way his eyes searched hers, made it impossible. He moved closer, deliberately, until he was just a breath away. She could feel it, feel him, his closeness, his warmth, the tension coiling like a spring between them. "You're thinking about that first kiss," he murmured. She swallowed, heat rushing to her cheeks. I shouldn't be." "But you are," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Because it mattered. And it matters. And I can't stop thinking about it either." Isabella's fingers trembled. Her body betrayed her. Her mind screamed logic, safety, control. But her heart, her body, her soul, whispered something else entirely. Damien reached out, a finger brushing a strand of hair from her face. It lingered, just touching, teasing, dangerous in its restraint. Her breath hitched. "You want to run," he said softly. "But you're not leaving, and you don't want to leave. Admit it." She swallowed hard, words stuck in her throat. I don't." He leaned closer, his lips hovering near hers, far closer than before. closer than the night of their first kiss. The firelight danced across his face, shadows tracing the sharp lines, the curve of his jaw, the heat in his eyes. "Good," he whispered, "because neither am I. And this—" His hand lifted slowly, brushing her, cheek with the gentlest pressure. "This tension between us, it's not going away." She felt the pull of it, magnetic, inevitable, dangerous, every nerve ending alive, every heartbeat synchronized to his nearness. "You're impossible," she whispered, half frustrated, half surrendered. "And you," he said, voice low, teasing, threatening, "are irresistible." Her lips parted, breath trembling, and for a moment, the world narrowed down to the two of them, two people bound by marriage, danger, secrets, and desire. The fire crackled, the shadows shifted, and neither spoke for a long, long moment. Finally, Damien exhaled, stepping back reluctantly, leaving her with the ache of anticipation. "Later," he murmured. And not just because of rules. Isabella's pulse raced, her skin burning where his hand had touched her. She realized in that instant that nothing in this mansion or outside it was stronger than the tension between them. Not danger, not secrets, not family, not even fear. And that realization thrilled her, terrified her, and bound her to him more than anything else could. The night was darker than usual, the kind of dark that swallowed streetlights, that made the city seem like a shadow stretching for miles. Isabella sat by the window in the master bedroom, draped in a silk robe, staring at the wet streets below. The storm from a few nights ago had passed, but its echoes remained. Broken windows, splintered wood, and the constant hum of tension in the air. She didn't hear Damien enter. She only felt him, like a presence that consumed the room. He leaned against the doorframe, eyes scanning her face, expression unreadable. "They're moving faster than I anticipated," he murmured, voice low, rough, edged with danger. She frowned. "Who?" "Someone who doesn't care about rules. Someone who doesn't care about warnings. Someone who thinks they can take you, or me, or both of us down." Her stomach tightened. She realized for the first time that the danger surrounding her marriage wasn't just about family grudges or old Mafia rivalries. This was personal, and it was coming closer. "They're here?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "They were," he said. "And they're testing us, probing our weaknesses, seeing how far they can push us before we fight back." Her pulse quickened. The knowledge that someone wanted to harm her, or him, made her chest tighten. But more than fear, there was something else. Determination. She wasn't going to be the victim again. Not now, not ever. Damien stepped closer, the warmth radiating from him both protective and intoxicating. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I'll handle it," he murmured. "But you need to stay close. You're not just my wife. You're the key to everything. And if they take you, I lose everything." She looked into his eyes and saw the storm behind them, the rage, the calculation, the obsession. He wasn't just concerned about her safety. He was ready to destroy anyone who dared threaten it. Footsteps echoed outside the bedroom. Both of them stiffened. Damien's eyes darkened, and in a single fluid motion, he moved toward the window, peering into the darkness. "Cameras," he muttered, scanning the perimeter. "They've been watching, waiting for the right moment." Isabella's heart raced. "What do we do?" Damien turned, jaw tight, expression unreadable. "We make them regret ever trying." He pulled her close, one arm around her waist, his other hand brushing damp strands of hair from her face. The storm outside wasn't just rain. It was adrenaline, tension, anticipation. And, in the moment, it was as intimate as any kiss, any touch, any promise he had ever made. "They won't get you," he whispered, lips near her ear, voice low and commanding. "Not while I draw breath. Not while I live. Not while you're mine." Isabella's chest heaved. The intensity of his words, the proximity, the heat. It made her feel alive, terrified, and completely dependent on him all at once. A sudden noise outside, a metal gate scraping against the driveway, made them both tense. Instantly. Damien's hands were on her shoulders now, firm, protective, and instinctively ready to act. He whispered, almost growled, "Stay behind me. One step, one wrong move, and I'll tear this place apart to keep you safe." Isabella's pulse throbbed. She realized that danger was no longer abstract, no longer a distant threat. It was here now, testing them both. But there was something else too. In the face of real danger, the magnetic tension between them intensified. His protective instincts, his obsession, his dark, unpredictable passion, they all wrapped around her, making her feel simultaneously terrified and alive. And in that moment, Isabella understood the truth. With Damien, danger wasn't something to fear. It was something that drew them closer, tested them, and made the fire between them impossible to ignore. Outside, shadows shifted. Inside, the storm in their hearts raged, and neither would back down. The mansion shivered under the weight of the night. Rain had returned, a relentless drum against the windows, mixing with the tension inside like it had a purpose of its own. Isabella stood near the staircase, heart hammering, pulse racing in. Time with the storm outside. Every instinct screamed danger, and yet every nerve in her body was drawn to Damien, who moved through the hallway like a predator calculating the distance to his prey. "Stay behind me," he said, voice low, dangerous. His hand rested firmly on her back, guiding her with a grip that was equal parts command and protection. She nodded, silent, terrified, but unafraid. Not with him. Not tonight. The intruders came like shadows, 3 figures slipping through the broken fence on the property line, their movements careful, calculated, but not careful enough. Damien's eyes caught them immediately. He exhaled slowly, then tightened his jaw. "They're testing me," he muttered. "And tonight, they'll learn exactly what it means to cross the Moretti family." In a heartbeat, he was gone from her side, moving with lethal precision through the foyer, pulling a sleek gun from under his jacket. Isabella followed instinctively, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The intruders realized too late that the house wasn't empty. Lights snapped on. The shadows betrayed them, and Damien's presence descended like judgment. His voice, calm but edged, with lethal authority, cut through the storm. "Stop!" They froze just for a second. That second was all he needed. Shots rang out. The walls reverberated with the crack of gunfire, the metallic clang of weapons. Meeting the cold marble floors, Isabella's breath caught as she ducked behind a heavy chair, watching him move, fluid, unstoppable, a shadow of wrath and control. Every step precise, every motion calculated to protect her and eliminate the threat. He appeared beside her suddenly, hand on her arm. "Stay down," he barked. She obeyed, though part of her wanted to run into the storm with him, to face whatever danger dared come near them. The firefight ended almost as suddenly as it had begun. Damien emerged from the shadows, the last intruder incapacitated at his feet. Rain poured in through broken windows, drenching him, but he didn't care. His eyes were locked on her, fierce and unyielding. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, voice rough, urgent. She shook her head, trembling. "No, I'm fine." He stepped closer, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. His hands were large, commanding and impossibly gentle. "You don't leave my side," he whispered. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." Her heart pounded in her chest, both from the danger they had just faced and the closeness of him. He leaned down, forehead resting against hers. "Do you understand?" he asked, voice low, intimate. "Yes," she breathed, almost trembling. "I understand." For a moment, the storm outside matched the storm inside her. Violent, unrelenting, and consuming. Damien's lips brushed hers. Not a hesitant kiss this time, but one that spoke of claim, obsession, and protection. Hunger mingled with tenderness, and for the first time, Isabella realized the depth of their connection. When he finally pulled back, his hand still cupping her face, he whispered, You are mine, and anyone who thinks they can touch you will regret it. She felt the intensity of his promise in every fiber of her body. Outside, the rain fell harder, lightning splitting the sky. Inside, the mansion was alive with tension, adrenaline, and a new, undeniable closeness between them. Danger had come to the doorstep, but Damien had defended it. And Isabella, terrified, exhilarated, and undeniably drawn to him, knew she had found something more than protection. She had found fire, and fire, once ignited, could never be contained. The mansion was quiet now, the storm having passed, leaving the night clean and still. But inside Isabella's room the air was thick, not with danger but with anticipation. Every heartbeat, every breath seemed magnified. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, waiting, though she didn't know for what. Damien entered without warning, as he always did. No knock, no preamble, just him, powerful, magnetic, unpredictable. He closed the door behind him, the soft click echoing in the tense silence. "Isabella," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "We need to talk." She looked up, meeting his eyes. They were stormy, conflicted, vulnerable even, though he'd never admit it. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "About everything. About my family. About the threats. About us." His jaw tightened. He came closer, slow, deliberate, and for the first time, he hesitated. Not because he was unsure, but because he had to measure every word, every action. "You're different," he murmured, running a thumb along her jawline. "You've broken my walls. I never thought anyone could." Isabella's pulse quickened. Her hands lifted, almost involuntarily, to rest on his chest. The warmth beneath her fingers was real, solid, and frightening. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Why do you care so much?" He exhaled sharply, closing the distance between them. His forehead rested against hers. "Because," he whispered, voice rough and intimate, "you're the one who refuses to be broken. You're the only one who makes me want more. Something I've never wanted before. Someone I've never allowed myself to want." Her breath caught. The truth of his words sank in. Damien Moretti, the man who ruled with iron, who crushed enemies without remorse, who made her fear him with every glance, was vulnerable with her. "And I feel it too," she admitted, trembling. "Even though I shouldn't. Even though it's dangerous, I can't stop thinking about you." He lifted her chin gently, forcing her to look into his eyes. "You won't stop," he said, voice low, intimate. "And neither will I." The walls that had once defined him, the rules, the control, the silence, cracked. They weren't gone, not completely, but they faltered in her presence. And she knew instinctively that once they fell, there would be no going back. He stepped closer, his lips hovering over hers. The space between them was charged, electric, every second stretching into eternity. "Do you trust me?" he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. "Good," he murmured, finally closing the gap. Their lips met, slow, deliberate, deep. This wasn't the first kiss, but it was different. Intense, possessive, tender. A claim, a promise, and a confession all at once. Her hands wound into his hair, pulling him closer. His arms encircled her waist, holding her like he never wanted to let go. The fire between them blazed brighter than any storm, hotter than any threat outside the walls of the mansion. Every tension, every fear, every hesitation melted into the rhythm of their hearts, together, unstoppable, inevitable. When they finally parted, Damien rested his forehead against hers again, voice rough and intimate. "You're mine," he murmured, repeating the words like a vow. "And I'll protect you, love you, and claim you in every way you allow me to." Isabella's chest heaved, her heart racing. "I'm yours," she whispered back, feeling the weight, the warmth, and the undeniable pull of their connection. Outside, the city slept unaware. Inside, the mansion held two people bound by fire, danger, and desire, walls broken, defenses down, and hearts exposed. And in that exposure, they had found something far more dangerous and intoxicating than any threat, each other. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's windows, casting golden light across the polished floors. For the first time in weeks, Isabella felt a sense of calm, not because the world was safe, but because she had someone who made her feel unshakable, even in the midst of chaos. Damien stood in the hallway, backlit by the rising sun, coat draped over his arm, eyes scanning the empty rooms with the same intensity he always carried. But when he saw her, the storm in, his gaze softened. "Morning," she whispered, her voice quiet, intimate. He smirked faintly, stepping closer. "Morning. Did you sleep?" "Like a log," she said, though her heart still fluttered at the memory of last night. The kiss, the closeness, the confessions whispered in the darkness. He reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips, brushing a soft kiss across her knuckles. "Good," he murmured. "Because today we begin for real. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more threats unchallenged." Isabella's chest tightened. She realized that the threats weren't gone. They would never fully disappear. But with him they were manageable. With him, she felt invincible. Her family arrived shortly after breakfast, their faces heavy with apprehension and remorse. Damien didn't waste time. His presence was commanding, undeniable. The power he radiated wasn't just authority, it was protection, obsession, and promise all rolled into one. "Your mistakes," he said, voice cold and measured, "have consequences, but they won't touch." Her again. Her father swallowed. Her mother's hands trembled, and her brother's eyes darted nervously. Isabella felt a surge of satisfaction. Not cruelty, but justice. She had endured. She had survived. And now, everyone around her understood her strength and the force that protected her. Damien's hand found hers, fingers intertwining effortlessly. He leaned close, whispering just for her. "You've changed everything. Me, the rules, the world, and I'll never let anyone threaten you again." She looked up at him, eyes bright with unspoken emotion. I trust you, completely." "Good," he murmured, a faint smile touching his lips. "Because you're mine. Forever. Not just on paper, not just in marriage, but in every heartbeat, every breath, every moment." The day passed in a blur of calm after chaos. They walked the mansion grounds together, the sun warming their faces, rain-soaked soil drying underfoot. There was no danger now, only quiet victories. Every glance, every touch, every brush of skin against skin reaffirmed what they had. Discovered in the storm, in the threats, in the night, they were inseparable. That evening, the fire crackled once more in the grand living room. Damien held Isabella close, lips brushing the side of her face as they shared a quiet moment of intimacy. A promise without words. "You've changed me," he murmured. "Made me want things I didn't know existed. Made me capable of love I didn't think I deserved. And you've protected me," she replied softly. "Taught me that even in danger, there's safety. If I'm with you," his hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing over her lips. "We're unstoppable together," he said, "and I'll spend every day proving it to you." Isabella rested her forehead against his, letting the warmth and strength of him settle into her bones. The walls between them had crumbled, replaced with trust, desire, and an unbreakable bond. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the darkness that had tried to claim her and the man who had refused to let it. Inside, the mansion held a new kind of power. Love, obsession, protection, and the certainty of forever. Damien pressed a final lingering kiss to her lips, soft yet commanding, sealing the promise between them. "I'm yours," he whispered. "And you're mine, forever." Isabella smiled, breathless and alive, knowing that no storm, no threat, no secret could ever undo what they had built. Together, they would face the world, stronger, unstoppable, and irrevocably entwined. And so, the story ended not with fear, not with regret, but with the unshakable certainty of love, power, and the kind of devotion that could withstand anything. And that, dear listeners, is the story of Isabella and Damien, an unyielding love forged in danger, desire, and destiny. Their journey has tested loyalty, shattered walls, and awakened a passion that no threat could contain. If you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the fire between them, don't let the story end here. Subscribe now to follow every twist, every secret, and every stolen kiss. Be the first to uncover the next chapters of love, power, and suspense in the world of the Mafia boss. Your next obsession is only one click away. Subscribe and step back into the world where innocence meets obsession, and hearts are claimed forever.